Masechet Hullin Daf Pei Gimel Amud Aleph, third white line by the Mishnah. Ba'arba Prakim Bashana, four times a year. The person who's selling an animal to another guy, he has to let the guy know that he sold the parent or the child already. Imam Macharti Shchoti said, I sold the mother today. Bitahem Macharti Lishchot, or I sold its daughter today. Velu Hanisa, the four times a year that we're going to they might slaughter at the same time. Arab Yom Tov, Aaron Shal Chag, the last day of Chag of Sukkot. That's Shmini Atzeret. It's a lot of parties. Ve'erev Yom Tov Shishon Shel Pesach, Erev Pesach, Sukkot Pesach. Ve'erev Atzeret, the Erev of Shavuot. Ve'erev Rosh Hashanah, before Rosh Hashanah. Uchtiv Ve'erev Yisrael Haglid, and Erev Yisrael Haglid. The Erev Yom Tov, a Purim Haglid. You also Erev Yom Kippur, considered a Chag as well. Marbida. Ematai, when you're required, B'dan She'en Lo Revach, when there's no time between the sales. Aval Yesh Lo Revach, but it's like a day in between. And you have to let him know. Because you could assume that the guy already slaughtered it. The agrees. If a guy wants to sell the mother animal to a groom, the daughter animal to the bride, we'll explain why specifically those answers. That you're supposed to tell the second buyer because it's going to the party. Same party, they're going to sort of slaughter for the same party. It might be the same day. These four times a year, you can force a butcher to slaughter against his will. Even if the guy bought $10 of meat, you could make him buy it. I feel sure even for a bull worth 1,000 dinars, even if the customer only owns dinar. You force him to slaughter. Like if you got him, therefore the animal were to die from before it's slaughtered, and then you lose the money. The customer loses because he already owned it. I know but the other days of the year you can't. If the guy owns it partially, you cannot force the guy to sell, and therefore if the guy dies, it goes to the seller, the butcher. Okay, the loss goes to the butcher. Tanabat says, Tell not let the guy know. You can still proceed, and you don't have to worry that maybe the guy sold it already. Or only if the guy tells you, you have to worry about it. Marida. When do we say this? Why do we especially mention it? The mother animal to the groom and the daughter animal to the bride. Why don't you say one and one? Whereas the mitzvah agab urhek mashman teaches you something in passing. That what? The orha the mitrach beth tefem beth kalata. It's more common for the groom to invest more effort in the wedding than the bride. That's why the bigger animal is going to the groom. Okay. Babra Kimel we said four times a year. Force the guy to sell, etc. But how can you force the guy to sell? The guy only paid. He didn't do kinyan. He didn't pull the animal. He didn't lift it. He didn't draw it near. He did kishem mashach. He did it. That's why he acquired it. But 1 second. The next part of Mishnah says, okay, the next part, the rest of the year, if the guy paid it, he's not acquired. If it dies, the seller loses. But if he drew it near, then he acquired it. The Gemara says, Amar Rav Shmuel bar Yitzchak la'olam lo mashach. Really, never did a kinyan. In some case where the butcher can transfer the ownership upon him through a third party. During the four times a year, this chutulo is a benefit for the guy to get the meat. You can acquire it for him even without him being there. During the rest of the year, the chutulo, it's not no advantage to purchase the meat. And having a you can't do that. You can't hurt someone, quote unquote, without consent. During these four times a year, the Chachamim made their rulings based off of Doraita. Then Rabbi Yochanan said, technically, Midraita, money should acquire. How come we have to draw something near to acquire it instead of money? Because you're worried that someone might say, oh, you bought wheat from me, you paid me for it, you acquired it, but then I had a fire last night, you lost it, sorry. Therefore, we have to make different requirements. Regarding to one day that you said that it's the same day to slaughter for the mother and child, the day follows the night, meaning it's night and day, that's considered one full day, like Shabbat. That is where Rishon says from the Pasuk of Bereshit. And mentions one day in Bereshit. Same wording by the slaughtering of mother and child. Also says one day. The day after night. But no, therefore also over here, we'll have to the night. And so the Rashi reads since the entire Torah regarding mother and daughter, it only mentions Kochim. But Kochim goes after the night. Maybe one thing as well, that maybe it'll only go for apply over here. Then كان يبقى حد في يوم زي الشباب في الورد يوم أنا ما بدري مثل شيء واحد هذا شيء مش ميت هيا من هذا كده. Okay, proof. Same proof as before. Another proof of one day. باليومين ما had one day يومهم يوحد تعاون بارو كروز. A specific day you need to announce. لما كان remember that we say from here make بعضها كم يشنا 4 days a year ما خبرت ما خبرت زي ده let them know. That's what it means. Like, oh, on a specific day you have to be careful. I don't know. أو طلب بناء على الله أو طلب بناء على طلب no. Next هلاخا covering the blood كسوء هدام كسوء هدام إنه هيك هلاخا covering the blood of a حياة wild animal that's slaughtered or a bird. Baaris of Hotlaris during in Eretz Yisrael outside Eretz Yisrael. Define by Tupim when the Betash is there, when the Betash is not there. Alim is it. Behudin Avalava Kochim. Only by non Kaddish animals, but by Kaddish animals we don't do Kis Adam because it's blood on the Zbeach. They don't have a foot only place to have in birds. Bimzuman Shinimzuman, whether or not they're considered prepared or unprepared, which means whether or not they're captured in the wild or they're in captivity. V'noeg coin also applies to the coin with pinchers effect because we're not sure if it's a haya or behema. V'en shohatina to the tob. We can't slaughter the coin in tob because we don't know if we're allowed to do kisu adam on it. V'im shahatob they did slaughter it. In mahasin tomorrow you don't cover the blood because it might not be hayav and therefore you can't do melachav removing the blood. Like I said, with the my time allow. How come by kadosh animals you don't do kisu adam? Ilim maybe shum mizrach ones because tell me the halacha because of a reason the Rizra holds. The Rabbi Rizra holds. How should I say for the matava for the Allah? Famous halacha that kisu adam. If you ever heard us to do this as well, they do this. Kisu adam has to be done. You slaughter the animal. The blood has to fall into dirt, and then you cover the blood with dirt on top. Sandwich. Dirt, blood, dirt. Why? Shneimar v'shafach edamo, you shall spill the blood v'chisau be'afar and cover it in the earth. Afar doesn't say with earth, ela be'afar in the earth. The man teaches you Mishahar doesn't say shitin afar the dirt on top and bottom. V'achalav shepherd. In the case of coaching, it's impossible because there's be'afs there. Hey, chilev we put he was supposed to do. Litev v'leble. We put on his be'ach and then leave it there. كمصيف بنيان that's considered adding to the مزباح وتي بس إذا كنت هذا من عشان على هذا السكيل you can add more. Otherwise, you should not leave the earth from the mizbeach. How had seven is considered a hatisat, a separation between the blood and the mizbeach. So I just do it. Gemara says nehid l'matalav shar. Okay, you can't put the earth under the blood. The ma'ala shabe you should put on top. Levi kisid let's cover at least time where it says there. Shabe hana min ismir shahad yahya ba'achar shahad behema. If you slaughtered a hayah, then you slaughtered then it behema. Patum machlo you don't have to cover it. Behema ba'achar hayah. If you slaughtered behema, then the hayah goes on top. Hayah like so you can cover on top even though there's no dirt on the bottom. مرة هناك كتير بزي لك بزي دم الرزاق كل بلا إن مع بلا مع كذب وفخوش إن رأي بلا مع كذب. This is a famous concept. The idea is in general there's a certain recipe to make the oil and the flour in considered mixed for korbanot and stuff. And there's a certain recipe. Now, what happens if you did the recipe but it doesn't mix well? Or what if you didn't do the recipe and it did mix well? Rabbi says if you follow the recipe, even if it doesn't mix well, it works. If you did not follow the recipe, even if it did mix well, it still does not work. So over here. Same concept applies over here. Whether the blood is fit to have earth on top and bottom, then you don't need it on the bottom as well. But if it cannot have earth and bottom, then it doesn't work. So in the case of the hayah, the behemoth on top, technically you could have had the amount on bottom. Technically you could put earth in the bottom. You forgot, therefore it's kasher. By mizbeach, you cannot put it on the bottom, therefore it's not. Where it says, let them squeeze out blood on mizbeach, scrape it off, put it on earth, and then cover it with earth. The time Mishnah says, then it has blood that splatters, or blood on the knife. You have to cover it, seemingly. Amad, you can see the you can scrape and put it on. Then scrape it and put it on. The Gemara says, even if we're into slaughtering Kaddish animals slaughtered from the beach, hachinami, and you could do that. Hachinami is talking about the kosher tabait, animals that were made hagdash as funds for the upkeep of the Beit HaMikdash. When that's slaughtered, you can't eat it, therefore you cannot benefit, and therefore you don't do kisar. Okay. Okay, but if why don't you redeem it? Make it mutar for consumption, and then it's cover the slaughter and cover it. Where it says ba'inan ha'amda baraba, you need it to be able to be standing and assessed. And since this cannot be assessed because it's already slaughtered, because then the slaughter is considered unfit, therefore it's not chayav in blood. covering it. Ukhman, who's according to? Ikram, you're going to say the mayor that that anything to be considered in standing ready for assessment. Ha'amar shahita she'en uriyash ma'ahita, but he already said that a slaughter that's not fit for shahita is not considered shahita for covering the blood. And therefore, right, we said we're going to say later on that if someone slaughters an animal and finds to be taref, he still has to cover the blood, even though you're not able to eat it. So we see that slaughtering something unfit is still considered hayav in kisu adam. Now, Iker Meir Shimon, Shimon, Damar Shita, and Shane Rialish Mahita, he holds this unfit slaughtering is not considered Shahita. Therefore, he'll say that it's not included in the standing and assessing. So, how can you say both of these opinions seemingly will both hold that they're not Hayav? Amar Yosef, Rabbi Yisrael, Rabbi Tanai. When Sila Rabbi Tanai, he holds opinions, he made his opinion according to multiple times. Regarding unfit slaughtering, he held like Rabbi Shimon that it is not considered Shahita. Regarding redemption, that even animals that are kadosh for the upkeep in the Midrash are required, and therefore the B would hold that if you slaughter the animal for the upkeep in the Midrash, it's permanently unfit, and therefore you don't need kisvadam.